Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's the legislative session that's in, and there's a lot of things going on the Hill. We have with us our NSU alum and Delegate Cliff Hayes to explain it to us all. And in the second half hour, what's going on in our community? We have with us the Executive Director of the American Heart Association of Hampton Roads to tell us about their event, Go Red. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Claville. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's State of the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank you all again for joining us on this beautiful Sunday in Hampton Roads. A little snowy, but we love it. January 30th in the year of 2022. We have with us our producer who's always keeping us right on the air, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous. You can hear him live every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. Marvin, how's it going?
Everything is going great. I'm so glad that the snow did not just, take over our entire weekend, because we have a lot of great news and we have to get out to the 757. So we were able to make it here safely. Oh, there was some ice out there, man. I had to be careful when I was walking outside. But other than that, glad that it's pretty clear. The roads are pretty clear. Absolutely.
And look, this is the second weekend we've had snow, and thank goodness that we're not experienced what our neighbors in the north have experienced, but we've got a lot for our area. So again, make sure that you're staying safe, enjoying the beautiful view, the white blanket that's out there, but continue to remain safe. Also, continue to keep an eye on your health. Remember to protect yourself and others. Go ahead and get vaccinated and make sure that you're adhering to all of the guidelines, health guidelines that you need for your health and those surrounding you. And again, we'd like to thank once again all of our Spartan Nation supporters as we broadcast here on the campus of the Norfolk State University, the new sound of Hot 91, the Soul of VA in WNSB here. Without the support of the Spartan Nation, without the support of the university led by our phenomenal president, seventh president, Dr. J, and the many phenomenal administrators, faculty, staff, students, alums all around the world, we could not do what we do here. So again, we want to thank you. So listen, we're continuing our View from the State Legislature series in the General Assembly, the month of January, February, and March, breaking down and bringing to you movers, shakers, and policymakers to discuss issues that are important to the community. That's what we do here on this show. We give you the facts and let you make your mind up for yourself. So there's a lot that's happening on Capitol Hill. There's a lot that's transpired just this past week. And there's no other person that I thought should be on the show this week than our very own NSU alum, good friend of Norfolk State University, Delegate Cliff Hayes. Brother Hayes, how you feel this morning?
Good afternoon, Brother Dr. Claville and the NSU family. Everyone out there in the land of Sparta. It is exciting as we sit here at the Capitol here in Richmond, overlooking the Capitol building. All of this snow on the ground are just signs of goodness, because when the snow comes out, when the ice comes out, when the frigidness comes out, we know it's killing some bad stuff, killing some germs, right?
Absolutely.
Use that analogy here in Richmond. It's some bad stuff coming forward, and we're trying to kill it, slow it down, keep it from rolling us back from the many gains that we've been able to accomplish over the last few years.
Absolutely.
But as always, I'm excited to be with you and be on the hot 91.1 WNSB radio station, and just excited to be here today.
Well, Delegate Hayes, Brother Hayes, you know that you're no stranger to the university, to this radio station, and to the show of State of the Water. We always appreciate your insight, your expertise as it relates to the things going on in our community, and more specifically, impacting the Hampton Roads area, your district, 77 district, and also the campus of Norfolk State University. So listen, I want to get right into it because there's a lot of things that's happening on the Hill, a lot of bills that have been put in, a lot of things that the governor's doing, and also a lot of things that the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, to which you are a member, have forged and starting to do as well in this session. So tell us about the bills that you're sponsoring, some of the things that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm just doing some basic common sense kind of legislation this session, hoping that we can bring folks together in support of the legislation that I actually have coming forward. As I was always taught, and I always use athletic sports analogies, you got to remain fluid. You don't know what the situation might be, and so you have to, in order for you to be successful, you have to sometimes adapt. It's not only important for us to have a high intellectual quotient, right, and high IQ, we have to have a high AQ, a high adaptability quotient, and to be able to maneuver and move and still get some stuff across the finish line. And that's what we're working on here under these circumstances. The House and where I sit has now changed leadership and control over to the Republican side. And so me being a Democrat, we are not in the majority. So taking into account with that, I try to push for things that I know will be important, like, for instance, in the way of budget amendments. I have a budget amendment to assist and help with a process that's going to help the entire state, but more so right there in the Triangle area, Newport News, Williamsburg. We have what we call Jefferson Labs, and they are competing with the Department of Defense for this supercomputer, the only one that will be built in the world. And so they need to be able to go before the Department of Defense and say, we're ready. We have the technical expertise with Labs. We have colleges and universities with computer science majors. We have Norfolk State University. We have Hampton University. We have the College of William and Mary. We have Old Dominion. We have Tidewater Community College. We have Virginia State University. We have VCU, Virginia Tech, George Mason. We have here in the Commonwealth the programs that undergird a pipeline of people who can be readily trained to backfill the jobs that are going to be necessary for the distinct data analysis that's necessary. We know where we are in this day and time, in this age. We've moved from the agricultural age, we've moved from that to the industrial age and shifted to some other places in time. Well, today we find ourselves in the age of information, the age of the internet, the age of how that information needs to flow and flow securely, and to be able to use the data that we collect in such a way that it can be used as a tool for very, very smart decision making. In other words, turn that raw data into information. That supercomputer is there, but we need to say to the Department of Defense that we are committed here in the Commonwealth, and so we're willing to build the shell of a building in order to get this contract and help Labs get this contract for this supercomputer.
Right.
That's one of the budget amendments that I have. And then, of course, in the way of our healthcare providers, just some common sense stuff, cleaning up in the state code. Right now, if a healthcare practitioner moves, closes, or merges their business, the law says that you have to send by mail to the patient information regarding how they can get their records and let them know that you've moved. Well, as I mentioned, we're in the day of the Internet of Things. Electronic means is how we communicate today. We're going to update the state code to say that you can send that same updated information via email or text message to the patients. And then, of course, last year I carried this humongous bill making the Commonwealth of Virginia only the second state to protect its consumers by law, absent of any federal legislation, which we just don't have federal law regarding consumer data protection. Virginia, last year we passed the CDPA, Consumer Data Protection Act, which says to companies, if a person says they don't want their data to be shared or sold, you can't do it. They have a right to opt out and say, I do not want my data shared or sold. And I don't know about you, Brother Claville, and the NSU family. I'm sick and tired of getting text messages and emails about my car warranty has expired, or you can, all of that unnecessary stuff with that the delivery truck just left your house. Click right here, and you can win a prize. And all of that. That's all because your data is being shared and sold. And so the Commonwealth will have, starting January 2023, the ability to opt out of that and say, I don't want my stuff sold or shared. And so we're looking forward to January 2023. But this year, I have House Bill 714 is going to clean up just a couple of things in that regard. One is that the way that we used to fund things, and the original bill said that it would be a private fund set up for those companies that do not adhere to the law. They are, according to the Attorney General's office, can be fined. And if they get a fine, my bill set up a distinct place to put those resources. But now we believe that it's better to share that fund with another fund that penalizes companies that have had data breaches and don't have good cybersecurity standards in place.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have individuals like yourself where you have an expertise, your degree that you got from Norfolk State University, your experience in these areas, because experience matters, expertise matters. Just like during the time of COVID, we were the only state in the United States that had a physician as a governor. So I think that, again, knowledge, education, experience, expertise plays a major part in ensuring that good common sense bills help all Virginians and all persons to maximize our experience here in our great Commonwealth. So I commend you for that. And I'm looking forward to getting those calls off of my phone. So look, I want to pivot to something that's extremely important and something that you, the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, and others worked extremely hard on. And this is one of two issues I want to discuss in our time that we have here, and that's voting. So as our audience knows, Virginia was the only state to enact in the old Confederate a state voting rights bill act. So basically, it was voter protection, protecting the rights of voters here in our local elections. And also, we saw where absentee voting was a tremendous success in our Commonwealth. As a matter of fact, absentee voting surged in Virginia due to the pandemic. And not only that, but it also surged because the restrictions were taken off by legislators such as yourself during the last gubernatorial administration. So just to give you a few numbers, in 2016, a little bit over 500,000 people voted absentee in the presidential election. And in 2017, close to 200,000 voted absentee in the gubernatorial. But in 2020, over 2.6 million people voted absentee in the presidential election. And in 2021, over 1.2 million people voted absentee in the last gubernatorial election, which means that we like voting absentee. But Virginia Republicans have filed over 20 bills to restrict or limit absentee voting. Delegate Hayes, talk to us about the impact that this will have on communities that are voting at high levels, like African-American communities, communities who are first-time voters, and the impact it's going to have on future elections.
Yeah, we know the importance of that legislation and of the Virginia voter protection laws that we've had in place here recently, and so much success that we've had with it. And that act actually is a combination of a series of bills, individual bills that actually passed, all as a package. And so we know the importance of absentee voting and what that has meant when it comes to our elections. Never again do we want to return to the day of 2007, November, when folks stood in line to make history voting for President Barack Obama, when the lines were as long as they were, as cold as it was, even raining at one point, and just a bottleneck at our polling places. That was just evidence of the fact that we had some problems with our process and that we were not ready based on the infrastructure of voting that we had at that time. And so we worked very hard to change some of that so that we never will find ourselves in such a position. And I might add, I use that example of Barack Obama because that just kind of comes quickly to mind. But it's not just that time, it's every time people are trying to get to the voting booth. Just last week, bills were killed to literally help the disabled for curbside voting.
Right.
I mean, come on, man. How insensitive can you be that you don't want to allow an extension and make it easier for curbside voting at voting places for the disabled to be able to cast their vote? The truth is, there are some who want to put roadblocks in the way of the voting booth, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that is not the case. Fortunately, we have a firewall, if you will, in the Senate that is set up, and each one of the members of the Senate that I know of and that I am friends with, they say that they are to be the bricks in this firewall. So any of the foolishness, crazy voting bills that leave the House, they have a destiny that's going to end as soon as it hits that firewall over in the Senate. In my hand as we speak, Dr. Claville, I have a record of my grandmother, November election 1965. Margie Hayes has paid her poll tax. My grandmother. I didn't say my great grandmother. I said my grandmother. And so it hasn't been too long ago that has been the case here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Wow. And so we ought to, in a democracy, make sure that there's as much participation as possible. That is what a democracy actually is, a representative democracy. It says that we will get as close to full participation as possible, and that's how the system will work best. Under those circumstances, we need to allow people to vote. We need to make sure that there's absentee voting allowed. We need to make sure that people can vote by mail. We need to make sure that early voting is truly early. This 45 days before an election has opened up a process and allowed things to flow so much more smoothly and seamlessly. When people can go and vote 45 days early, they don't have to worry about the stagnation and the obstacles, the limitations on running to try to cast their vote and make it to work on time. I mean, they have 45 days prior to the election to get there and vote. And, of course, we now have Sunday voting. So, a part of what we do often on the campaign trail, we visit churches and we ask people not to forget to vote. And obviously in our churches, we can't tell people how to vote, but it's important to get the people out and participate, because we know once they go participate, they know what to do once they get there.
Absolutely.
The obstacle is making sure that they know an election is going on and that they can get to the polls.
Let me tell you.
By the way, speaking of which, we moved the local elections for mayor, city council, and school boards from May to November. Don't you know, folks have been putting bills in this year to return it back to the old process of voting in May. And fortunately, those bills have been killed up to this point. So you have to be ever vigilant and keeping an eye out for some of this stuff.
Let me tell you, I think giving access, as you stated, access to voting helps our democracy, makes our democracy better, because it gives individual citizens an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process for their lives. And for me, removing the requirements for absentee voting was phenomenal, because now I could just go in without saying, oh, I know I don't have military service, I know I don't have this and have that, so I have to come in during the time and vote. So it makes it easier, makes it more accessible, and, again, just common sense policies to help all Virginians. So thank goodness for the voting bills that we have that increase access, and we're hoping that the right thing is done on Capitol Hill to continue to increase access. In our last several minutes, I want to pivot to education. So I went to my son's basketball game, and talking with one of the teachers, they talked about the tip line. They were saying, I hope I don't get called and reported on the tip line. And there's been a lot of discussion, of course, on the governor's day one orders. Of course, he said he would do it on his website, so he fulfilled that. So there's a lot of executive orders, directives that are there that people are now dealing with. Schools are dealing with, communities are dealing with, jobs and so forth, dealing with how do we respond to this. But with education, give us your take in the last several minutes of the educational direction that you believe the governor's taking us in.
Yeah, I'm not too excited to see what's happening now with regards to education and the initiatives that have been coming forward, proposed by our governor, and then some of the folks on the other side of the aisle from me, the things that they're pushing and carrying his water are tremendously disturbing. We were listening on the floor this week about how this whole tip line thing, where you're going to call and report folks for teaching history accurately in the classroom, is quite troubling. I think I read the other day about a teacher on the Peninsula Denby, I think it was, who was quoted as saying she is terrified because she doesn't know what she could be teaching, that someone is going to report her, et cetera, et cetera. And it just takes us back to a dark place in the history, not only of the country, but a history in the world, when those kinds of things were set up to go run to the government and, rat out your neighbor, so to speak, and allow big government to come get you. There's some scary stuff there. Oftentimes I say it's not going to be easy for someone coming from the private sector to get elected and be in a role at that level, because even with much success in the private sector, where you can snap your fingers and a staff of people will move to the beat of your drum in an instant. There are many requirements, regulations, and processes when it comes to serving in such a role, and even understanding what the current law is matters. So coming and barking and telling people what they're going to do when it's contrary to the state code is going to present a problem. Already it's begun to present a problem. And so in that regard, in a lot of ways, that's something that I saw this week. On a good note, where we were able to come together, Republicans and Democrats, is we had our Teacher of the Year this year, Miss Daphne Folsom, who comes from the 77th House District. She's a primary teacher at Portlock Elementary School, and where I actually went to elementary school, 2nd through 4th grade. And so we had her there on the floor of the House. We presented to her a House Joint Resolution 699, I think it was, or 69. And Senator Lionel Sproul was a chief co-patron of that. Senator L. Louise Lucas was a chief co-patron of that. 2 other Norfolk State alum. And we 3 Norfolk State Spartans saluted this young lady. And the House, erupted in applause and cheers and just all kind of accolades for her and the fine job that she does there at Portlock. What an exciting example she is as an educator and a teacher. And by the way, as much as I hang out on the Spartan social media pages and websites, I happen to see that Norfolk State actually saluted teachers and had her on the center of the football field during one of the homecoming, I think it was, games at Norfolk State. Don't you know I was there at homecoming and I didn't even know who this young lady was.
Oh wow!
but to see her there just this past week just brought joy to my heart, and we're excited about continuing to fight for education. By the way, HBCUs are in a wonderful place as politically folks try to duke it out to see who can out-support one another for our HBCUs. That leaves our HBCUs 180 degrees on the spectrum different from where they've been in the past, where they've been tremendously underfunded. And Governor Northam, on the way out the door, proposed his budget. I think it was over $150 million going to him. And then now Governor Youngkin, we've been waiting to see what his amendments might be suggested to our budget. He has left them alone as well.
Absolutely.
The question is how those resources will be used, and we don't want to tie the hands of our HBCUs. Particularly, I know the experience of Norfolk State. They need to be able to be flexible and fluid with the resources, because many of the students there may have a different set of challenges from students elsewhere in the Commonwealth as they go off to college. And so we need to make sure that Norfolk State, Virginia State, Hampton, Virginia Union, that they're all in a place that they can utilize those resources effectively.
Absolutely.
For the student population that they have.
Absolutely. Delegate Hayes, look, we always appreciate you being on the show. It's a wealth of knowledge. And look, as a Spartan, I know you love the Spartan Nation, and we love you as well. Listen, we're continuing to support you there. And keep in mind, we're going to have you back when the legislative session is over to wrap this thing up and let us know exactly how it's going to impact us. But we appreciate you so much.
Behold
the green. And go. And we'll be back after these commercial break.
Hello, this is Dr. Keith Newby, Medical Director of Health Equity with Centera Health Systems and CEO of the James E. Newby Jr. Foundation. I want to share with you a quick thought. I know people get quite frustrated when it comes down to changes in CDC guidelines and recommendations as it relates to protecting oneself from COVID-19 infection. I want to make sure people understand this piece. Medicine is a forever changing science. Things may happen one moment. We may get new information at another moment that may change original recommendations. COVID-19 has only been around for about a year and a half. I want to make sure people understand that. As a result of this, we're learning new things every day. Recommendations may change. Things that were said once may be altered later. That's part of medicine. I would rather people make changes based on new information than to stick to your guns on something that was old, because that was the thought at the origin. But things come up new, and we're going to still stick to the prior guidelines that may make people get in trouble. So I'm going to ask your patience to say this. Understand that this is an ever-changing world. What we know now may be different from what we learned a year ago. Therefore, the recommendations will change. Don't feel as people not knowing what they're doing, but they're being proactive. Again, this is Dr. Keith Newby. Thank you very much for listening.
Welcome back at Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We want to thank you all again for joining us on this beautiful Sunday as we broadcast live in the studio at WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA, on the campus of the Norfolk State University, led by our phenomenal president, Dr. J. Again, we want to make sure that you're remaining safe out there. We're enjoying this beautiful snow that we have here in Hampton Roads. And, of course, our prayers go out to those that were impacted north of us. So we're praying that they get up and going and that all is well for them. For those of you that have been joining us all the month of January, we are continuing our review from the General Assembly for the 2022 legislative session. So for the month of January, February, and March, we'll be engaging our legislators here in Hampton Roads, our alums, to see exactly what's going on and how they are impacting our community. And here on the second half of the show, we're going to pivot just a little bit, because not just does public policy affect us, but also our phenomenal nonprofits, the things that they're doing impact our community. And today we have with us the executive director of the American Heart Association of Hampton Roads, MeShall Hills, to talk to us about the Go Red for Women. MeShall Hills, thank you so much for joining us here on Stay in the Water.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the American Heart Association has been around for years, and it's an important part of what we do, and it's become a important part of, I would say, the woven fabric of America and our society. As a matter of fact, the American Heart Association famous community impact movement is returning here to Hampton Roads. So tell us a little bit about the American Heart Association of Hampton Roads.
Sure. So we are, the local part of the national organization of the American Heart Association. So we are obviously fighting for that same mission, and our mission is to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. And basically what that means is we want to see a world free of cardiovascular diseases and stroke. So like you said, for nearly 100 years, we've been fighting heart disease and stroke and striving to save and improve lives. And unfortunately, heart disease still remains the number one killer worldwide, and stroke ranks second globally. And so even when those conditions don't result in death, they cause disability, they diminish quality of life. And so we want to see a world free of cardiovascular disease right here in Hampton Roads.
Wow. When you mention that it's still a number one, still a top killer here of all of us, I mean, I was kind of shaken just a little bit, because I think we can all remember or know someone impacted by heart disease or strokes and so forth, things that's dealing with, as you say, cardiovascular health. And the mission of American Heart Association is so important for us to stay healthy, But, in Hampton Roads and a lot of places, there's so much great food. So,
right. This is true. This is very, very true. And everything in moderation is very true.
Absolutely. Well, look, before we get into your signature event, which is Go Red for women, this impact that you have on our community, I want our audience to know just a little bit about you and your role as Executive Director for the American Heart Association of Hampton Roads.
Sure. So my role really is to lead, develop, and evaluate and support community-wide strategies to improve the cardiovascular health of Hampton Roads. So that includes both, from a mission standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, really initiatives that create this culture of health. And so our organization wants to be a catalyst to achieving, maximum impact and equitable health and well-being in Hampton Roads. Our local focus areas are really around increasing food security, controlling blood pressure. We want to eliminate tobacco and vaping in teens, and then reduce women's risk. And so that's what we'll talk about with Go Red. And so we're looking at all of these issues from a health equity lens. And so how do we make sure that we're focusing on our most vulnerable populations and neighborhoods? And like you just mentioned, there's plenty of good food. Well, that is, it's interesting because when we think about access to food, a lot of times people think about food deserts because you hear that term come up where there's lack of food.
Absolutely.
But you also should think about food swamps. And so what a food swamp is where you have this excessive amount of unhealthy food, fast food, convenience stores, all of those type of things. And so those are things that we're looking at. I know you just had your legislative section on, and so we're looking at that at the state level. How do we have changes and make an impact in our communities that are sustainable? So that's kind of what my focus is. I supervise a team of development staff and community health staff. I work with our sponsors, donors, volunteers, and partners as a lead for our local advisory board and our other leadership committees in Hampton Roads.
Wow. Now, give us that. As you said, we heard the word food deserts, and that got a lot of attention during the pandemic. But what is the other designation of a lot of unhealthy food, fast food that you mentioned?
Food swamp. And so it is interesting because it's an oversaturation of unhealthy food. And so, for example, there are places in Portsmouth and in Newport News where you could drive for a mile and not run into a grocery store, no healthy food options, but you would pass 10 fast food places, maybe an ABC store, a tobacco shop, all of these different things. But so it is oversaturation in a particular neighborhood of unhealthy foods, which is really as equally, impactful as a food desert. So lack of healthy food, but then oversaturation of unhealthy foods in a neighborhood. And we see those a lot in our brown and black communities.
Look, you're exactly right. As you were describing it, my mind, I just started taking a mental journey in riding in the streets that I drive on throughout that great Hampton Roads area. And I'm like, you're right. There are some places where you can get sushi, you can get salads, you can get all these great healthy foods, and some where you can't. So the mission of what you're doing is very important to help us change public policy in order to eliminate those, not just food deserts, but food swamps. I like that.
Yes.
So let's get into your signature event and this movement that you have. One thing about the American Heart Association, we talked about your mission organization focus on not just heart, but also brain health for all. But the Go Red for Women is extremely important because according to the American Heart Association, it remains committed to the number one killer of women, cardiovascular disease. And I'm, again, when I read that just, again, I'm just really shocked that it's still the number one killer of women. So tell us more about, first of all, your Go Red for Women movement, and then how you plan to impact and what are the issues that you want to give more awareness to as it relates to this killer of women.
Sure. So, like you said, our Go Red for Women is our BAHA's signature women's initiative. It really encourages women about the awareness of the issue of heart disease and also taking action, right? And so the movement really harnesses the energy, passion that women have to come together to wipe out heart disease. It challenges women to know their risk, but then also take that action to reduce their personal risk. And then we also give them tools that they need to lead a heart-healthy life. And so, interestingly enough, we had a recent report, a special report that was published from the American Heart Association, and it analyzed a 10-year trend in women's heart disease awareness. And so the report revealed some really startling statistics. Women's awareness that heart disease was their leading cause of death declined, actually. So from 65% to 44%, with the most notable declines in younger women. So that's women ages 25 to 34, and then Black and Hispanic women of all ages. And so we're really calling for more to be done to double down on the efforts to reach younger women with a focus on empowering Black and Hispanic women with solutions to lower their personal risk for heart disease and stroke. And so really these findings are shaping our strategic focus right here in Hampton Roads. And so, 1 in 3 women will still lose their lives from cardiovascular disease. This is more than all cancers combined.
Wow.
And the fact, is that a lot of women just don't know that. And so we are focused on making this a priority and doing all that we can do to make sure that prevention tools are available.
Wow. Did you say 1 in 3 women?
1 in 3. 1 in 3. And, when we had our, when we were doing a lot of things in person, we would have women at a table and we'd say, look at the woman to your left, look at the woman to your right, and then yourself, and one of you will succumb to heart disease.
Oh my gosh.
And it is a startling fact. And what's even more startling is what I just told you. A lot of women, 65%, don't know that it's their number one risk factor.
So tell us about how women can understand that they are at risk for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, I would say, obviously we're a big factor. And so what we're hoping is through that movement that more women would start to do their personal checkups, start to make commitments to doing, healthy lifestyle. And so even during our Go Red for Women luncheon that's coming up, which happens to also be National Red Day, that's a day where we're raising awareness and we ask that others share about these risk factors. And so we're excited to be able to bring, this to a digital format. This year's theme is all about reclaiming your rhythm. And so we've been burnt out, we've been tired, trying to get by, and really adopted a lot of unhealthy habits in these past 2 years during COVID. And so, in fact, we know that more than half of Americans have said that COVID has impacted their mental well-being due to stress and worry. And so we're asking women to reclaim their routine and the things that matter the most, their health, their friends, their family. And so that's a start. And so it's just being aware. And so our hope is that when we partner with organizations in the community, our sponsors, healthcare organizations, churches, sororities, is raising that awareness. And February, starts it off. It's Heart Month. And so what better month to raise the awareness and really talk about prevention of these different diseases.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned, just health and so forth. Talking with our producer, Marvin Folks here, also known as DJ Scandalous, we were talking about, the COVID-15, the COVID-10, the COVID-5. And you mentioned picking up unhealthy habits and just really getting back in the groove because, we're back open. Society is open and it's time to go back out, not just to take in mind your COVID health, but your brain and your heart health. So this signature event, which will be held on National Wear Red Day on Friday, February 4th, 2022 from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Is a major event of the American Heart Association. And again, it's the Go Red for Women luncheon. It's going to be chaired by Dr. Cynthia Romero, who is the director of the Brock Institute at Eastern Virginia Medical School, and which is designed to raise awareness, as Executive Director MeShall Hill said, raise awareness about cardiovascular disease, the leading cause of death for women in the United States, as well as generate funds for life-saving cardiovascular research for women. MeShall, if you could, tell us what and who can participants expect at this phenomenal event?
Sure. So participants can expect an hour filled with impact, including a keynote address from Maya Shaka. She's the latest woman to break barriers in the world of sports. We will have a special guest performance from Grammy-nominated hip-hop duo Black Violin, and we'll hear from a local survivor and other women from around the community. We're also going to be announcing our 2022 Woman of Impact nominees, and so these are going to be change makers and leaders in the community that are all dedicated to improving the health and wellness of women right here in Hampton Roads. It's going to be an impactful hour on February 4th, and it's open to the public because we're bringing it in a digital fashion. Registration is required, but it is free, and we ask that all individuals attend, not just women, those that, have women that are important in their life and they want to support them as well.
Absolutely phenomenal. You stated not just are you having this event for all women, but you're featuring keynote speaker, like you said, one of the major barrier breakers, latest barrier breakers here from the Hampton Roads area, and also a graduate and alum of the Norfolk State University, Maya Shaka, the first black woman to be an NFL referee. So it looks like a major star-studded event, but more specifically, it's an event to raise awareness, research dollars to help all women. MeShall, who would this event be hosted by?
So this is hosted obviously by the American Heart Association, but it's brought to the community by our sponsors. And so our signature sponsor this year is Centera Healthcare, as well as Optima Health, and also Bayport Credit Union. And then we have a host of other local community sponsors that help us bring this to the community. So we're so thankful. And then, of course, you talked about our chairwoman, Cynthia Romero, in Eastern Virginia Medical. And then we also have a executive leadership team that's made up of a group of local business women and community leaders. And so all of them together really help make all of this possible.
Phenomenal. And from what I understand, we have our very own Wavy 10's Anita Blanton.
Yes, Anita Blanton is our MC. This happens to be her 7th year emceeing this event, and so we're so happy to have her. She's wonderful, and participants always and attendees always love her. Now,
of course, with Anita Blanton being a Hampton graduate and Maya Shaka being a Norfolk State graduate, this won't be the Battle of the Bay. But our great HBCUs are going to come together, right?
We are going to come. And I'm a Hampton grad also. So, just put that plug in there. But it won't be the Battle of the Bay. We're coming together for the good of ending heart disease. And so we know how to come together.
That is absolutely phenomenal. Now, this is a national movement, right? So
yes.
Hampton Roads area is not the only branch of the American Heart Association doing this?
That's correct. So this will be going on all over the nation. Not everyone's is on National Wear Red Day, but we have Go Red luncheons in all of our, major areas throughout the nation. And so this Go Red movement is national. And so you'll start to see on your local television and on your national television, our anchors will be going red and our national news people will be going red. And so we really are, so thrilled that people will take the time to raise awareness about heart disease.
Now, MeShall, I know that, you're executive director, so you have a team that works with you, and this is a huge event. As a matter of fact, if it's your signature event with all of these individuals, I hate to say star-studded, but it is star-studded with a lot of major firepower behind it to make a huge difference for women in research and to make sure that we take this number down from 1 to 0, hopefully. But tell us about your team that helped pull this together.
Sure. So, I have a team of both development staff who work on our different campaigns throughout the year. So Go Red is not our only campaign. We also have our Heart Walk, which is another signature campaign, and then our Heart and Stroke Ball. And then we also have our health staff. And so those individuals are all behind the scenes helping to make sure that this happens. And then we have a lot of volunteers. And so I have to be thankful of our volunteers in the communities. Like I said, we are a small but mighty team of staff that are pulling this all off. And then, of course, as I talked about, our different volunteers, sponsors, donors, all really come together to make this happen. It's really important. We have survivors that this is so important to their heart, and they give of their time and talents to make sure that this is put on. So it's a little bit of a mixture of everybody.
You mentioned survivors, right? And the inspiring stories there. Can you tell us about, and I know there was one story featured in the National American Heart Association digital media about a local Hampton Roads survivor. Can you tell us a little bit about that survivor and the others that will be there?
Sure. So there's so many different stories. And so we're going to be featuring the story of a local Hampton Roads woman this year that really, what I think is most inspiring about her story is that you leave from listening to her with knowing about the importance of listening to your body. And, that's one of the things that through the Go Red for Women movement we try to stress is that a lot of times women, we have so much going on that we put off things and we say, it's not a heart attack or it's not a stroke or I'm just stressed or it's anxiety. And so what I love so much about this year's story is she really focused on the power of listening to your own body and feeling empowered. And when you go to the doctor, say, no, I want answers today and I know something is wrong. And so I think that is something that I hope that the attendees this year will leave with, that, listen to your own body. When something's not right. And that's should be a priority.
When I read the story about the survivor that was highlighted, in the National American Heart Association, just at 26, an elementary school music teacher had a stroke between classes. According to the story, she felt fine in the morning, but by day's end, she had undergone surgery to repair a ruptured brain aneurysm. And Ms. Hill, to me, at 26, you shouldn't be going through brain surgery. You should be enjoying your life. You should be up and going. But that just shows me, and I hope everyone else, that this disease does not discriminate against color. No. It doesn't discriminate against gender, and it certainly doesn't discriminate against age. Right.
It's so scary, and you told that story, but just imagine we hear these type of stories all the time, and so the age is getting younger and younger. It is just very scary. One thing I'll say is when we did that study that I was mentioning, when we did the evaluation of a 10-year look at women's heart disease, we also found that in Black women in particular, there was around, and I may have messed up the bit, between 80% and 85% of women, and this included young women, so 25 and up, already had some form of heart disease.
Wow.
How scary is that? This is not an old person's disease. And, that's one of the other things that we try to make sure that we educate the public on. This is not a wait till you're 50 or 60 or 70 and then, no, this is starting in your 20s. And the habits that we have today and the things that we do as a young person affect us. And so, hypertension, having uncontrolled blood pressure is the leading cause of heart disease and stroke. Not knowing your numbers, not knowing your cholesterol, not knowing your blood sugar levels. These things are so important. And so, this is some of the stuff that we'll be focusing on in Heart Month, is making sure that women know their numbers and people in general.
Wow. You can view that story at heart.org. That's at heart.org. Again, it features a news story about a local woman, age 26, elementary school music teacher that had a stroke between classes. And thank God she made it and she's healthy. And according to the story, even though she delivered prematurely, she has a healthy son named Brienne Jr. So again, we're thankful for her surviving, and her story is not just inspiring now, Ms. Hills, but it's definitely going to be inspirational for years to come. So tell our audience a few things about how they can get involved with this phenomenal event. And I'm so glad that you're able to come on. We know that February is Heart Month. So how can our viewers get involved and make an impact?
Sure. So there's so many different ways. And so one easy way is to support by attending the luncheon on Friday that we spoke about. And so it's free to register. You can visit hamptonroadsga.org grfw.heart.org to sign up. You can also wear red on National Wear Red Day, which is that same day, and that raises awareness about heart disease and encourage others to do the same. We want people to commit to at least one healthy habit they're prioritizing. It could be around getting more sleep, reducing stress, physical activity, trying to get those 10,000 steps in, or whatever works best for you. And then encourage others to do the same in your network. Knowing the signs of a heart attack and stroke. We just talked about how important it is to listen to your body. Knowing those signs and what to look out for, not only just yourself, but in others. And then learning hands-only CPR is another way to be involved in February. It's 2 simple steps that could save a life. You can visit heart.org/CPR for more information on that. And then another way is by giving. And so we ask that people please consider contributing to the American Heart Association's mission. Every dollar makes a difference in the fight against heart disease and stroke. And, there's just so many different ways. And so the first step is prevention and, just knowing your own numbers, being aware of your own health. That's what we want people to remember in February.
That is MeShall Hills, Executive Director of American Heart Association at Hampton Roads, here telling us about their signature event, which is going to be held on National Wear Red Day, Friday, February 4th, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., an event that's hosted by Wavy TV's Anita Blanton, also featuring inspiring survivor stories such as the 26-year-old elementary school teacher that survived a stroke that she had between class, highlight of local women of impact, community leaders, and also featuring, as a keynote speaker, Norfolk State University's very own Maya Shaka, the latest trailblazer to break race and gender barriers in sports as the first Black woman to be an official NFL referee. So if you want to support this event, I'm encouraging you to go learn more about it. Go to Hampton Roads, grfw.heart.org. That's Hampton Roads, grfw.heart.org. That's Go Red for Women to learn more about this great event that will help to raise awareness about the number one killer of women, cardiovascular disease, raise money for research so that we can get this number down to 0. MeShall, thank you so much for joining us here on State of Water, and we look forward to the success of this event and also the health of our community here in Hampton Roads and across the country. Thank you so much for what you do for us at the American Heart Association of Hampton Roads.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you hear the music. That means that our time is done. We'd like to thank you again for joining us here on the new sound of Hot 91, the Soul of VA, on the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation of State of the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to discuss issues important to you, the community. We'd like to again thank our producer, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous, for all that he does for us on the show. Continue to join us live here every Sunday at 1 p.m. for the month of January, February, and March as we continue our view from the General Assembly of 2022 on Capitol Hill. I'm your host, Dr. Claville. Continue to remain safe out there, and we'll see you next Sunday.